Hello, in this short video I'm going to talk to you about how to answer question 2 in the AQA GCSE History Paper 2 Elizabethans topic. The question will always ask you to explain what was important about something that happened in her reign. So this question is explain what was important about Puritanism in Elizabethan England, but other examples might be explain what was important about Mary Queen of Scots, or explain what was important about the Catholic plot, or something like that. You're trying to look for two ways in which something was important, if you can. If you can only do one, then fine. But ideally, you're trying to look for two ways in which something was important. It's 8 marks, so it's worth about 10 minutes. And really brilliant if you can then say overall how important was something. How much change did it lead to, for example, or perhaps it didn't lead to much change. What were the consequences of it? So it's looking for good knowledge, in this case about Puritanism, but what's really important as well is that you're able to say why it was important and how it was important. Okay, so if I had this question, I'd be thinking to myself, well, what do I know about Puritanism? What do I know it was important in Elizabeth's age? So I might decide to talk about the following two things. I might decide to talk about the fact that Puritanism represented to some extent a threat to Elizabeth's religious settlement, and so that's an area that I could explore. And what else might I say? I might say it was important because lots of powerful men that were close to Elizabeth were also Puritans. Okay, so I think those two things make it pretty important. Okay, now how then will I go about writing this up? Well, I might want to plan a little bit first of all. So if that's my number one here, threat. Well, how was it a threat? Well, they Puritans, although small in number, well, you might want to put that as well because it will come out at the end. So not many, but they objected to the religious settlement. For example, they didn't like sad-faced bishops, and so they rejected that idea. They held their own services, so-called prophesyings. Sorry, I'm going to think about that for a minute. Prophesyings, which stood directly against her Church of England services. And they founded their own so-called separatist churches as well. And in the end, Elizabeth had to take action against them. And she was forced to crack down on their activities. So those are some of the things I might want to put in there. And I would want to plan out the second one in exactly the same way. Now, how would I write this up? So I'm looking for two clear reasons, aren't I? So I would say something along the lines of one way in which Puritanism was important was that it represented a direct threat to Elizabeth's religious settlement. Okay, now I always want evidence, don't I? For example, some Puritans refused to go to Anglican church services and set up their own churches. Now I could develop that with more evidence, but therefore I just want to make sure that, I'm linking it back to the question. Therefore, they posed a a problem for Elizabeth, who wanted to finally settle the long-running religious problems that had dogged England. So that's one. I could do another one similar, but this case talking about people like Walsingham and others who were Puritans, or at least had Puritan leanings, and I could explain why that was important, because it wasn't just fairly irrelevant people, it was people at the heart of government who were supporting, at least from a distance to an extent, some of these activities. So I could talk about another one. And then remember, the best answers, if possible, have some kind of judgment at the end. So how far, how important were they? Well, I might say that, you know, something along the lines of, whilst they were important because they were a threat, and clearly the fact that Elizabeth had to crack down on them meant they're important, actually their numbers were relatively small, so they weren't as much of a threat as, let's say, the Catholic plots. So a summary: times 2 reasons to show why the person or the feature or the thing was important, and then a judgment how important. And that's that question.